Sometime between the years 1620 and 1630, a sorry tale was recorded in the Kirk Session records of the parish of Irongray, 7 miles west of Dumfries in southwest Scotland. It is the sad story of a woman accused of witchcraft. At this time, a poor widow lived alone in a tiny mud-walled cottage near the lower end of the Bishop's Forest, a few hundred yards from where the old Cludden water, often called the Routin burn, Routin being an old Scots word for turbulence or noise, joined the water of Cludden as it flowed south to join the River Nith before pouring out into the sea at the Solway Firth. Near where she lived, the burn passes over a fine waterfall spanned by the Routin Brig, famed for its beauty, with a lovely cascade on one side and on the other a deep, dark pool. The widow earned her bread and eked out a meagre existence by spinning yarn and weaving stockings, some of which she sold to the young women of the district. She could often be seen on a warm summer's eve, sitting on a mossy rock by the Routin burn, reading or watching the play of light on the falls, or out gathering sticks late on a cold winter's evening amongst the round trees which still flourish along the sides of the stream. To our modern minds, these pastimes seem innocent enough, in fact, almost idyllic. But in the dark days where witchcraft was suspected everywhere, they were enough to set tongues wagging. Furthermore, it was said that when the young women of the district called on her to buy the stockings that she made, they would, sometimes, leave her smoky, poorly ventilated, damp and dark cottage bleary-eyed. Unsurprising, I would suggest, but to her suspicious neighbours, this was evidence that the witch had been telling them their fortunes, and they had received ill tidings. It was said that she often had lying in her window a black-letter Bible, whose boards were covered in the skin of a polecat, and which had 2 clasps of brass to close it. These clasps, it was said, were described as grotesque. No other details survive. As if being bleary-eyed in a smoke-filled room or owning a Bible wasn't enough to condemn her, it was claimed by her accusers that her lips were sometimes seen to be moving when she went to church, and that she had been known to predict shower or sunshine at certain periods, predictions which often came true. Her habit of collecting firewood by the light of the moon and of sitting amongst the crags and hollows along the Routin burn was, according to her accusers, evidence enough that she was in league with the devil. The Bishop of Galloway was repeatedly urged to bring her to trial and then punish the witch, calls which he ignored. But scared that he might be reported himself to the king for refusing to persecute witches, he at last allowed her to be brought before him. Forced from her cottage by an angry mob and dragged before the bishop at a makeshift court in the woods, the very woods which she herself loved, several of her neighbours were cited to declare before the bishop all the wicked things she had done. Interestingly, none of the young women who had been seen leaving bleary-eyed from her smoke-filled cottage were asked to give evidence or explain their apparent tears. Convinced that she was in league with the devil himself, she was sentenced to be drowned in a deep pool beneath the Routin Brig, the pool which I am now standing in front of. The crowd, however, insisted that this fate was too lenient, and that instead she should be shut up in a tar barrel and hurled into the Cludden. Almost against the bishop's consent, the woman was sealed in a barrel, fire was set to it, and it was rolled in a blaze into the waters of the Cludden. To this day, the spot where the prelate sat in judgment is still called the Bishop's Butt. The well from which she drew her water, and where the young rustic belles washed their faces clean of the smoke from her fire, still retains the name Witch's Well. A pool in the nearby Cludden still bears the name Witch's Pool, and to this day, rocks near the Routin Brig are still pointed out as a spot where she would sit. Hers was a sad and brutal end. Her only crime was to live a life most of us would now consider ideal. As I was leaving the woods, I came across this, drawn on a stone near the waterfalls. This witch's tree symbol, or arbor glyph, suggests that others, like me, remember the history of this area and are keen to remember the nameless widow who walked in the moonlight and read in the sun by the tumbling waters. I hope she has found peace. If you like this story and would like to see how I made the photographs which accompany the video, then pop over to my sister channel, John McKenna Photography, where there is a video explaining how I take the images. If you like this kind of content, then please hit subscribe, and that way you won't miss any of my future Tales from Scotland.